Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It is Professor Anime, and welcome back to yet again another Boruto Naruto Next Generations episode review. Today we will be discussing episode 48 of Boruto. So without further ado, let us begin. Okay, so when it comes down to Boruto episode 48, like it was to be expected, and like I said in my last review of Boruto, the conclusion of the Byakuga arc, pretty much this week's episode was just simply a filler-ish episode, but at the same time, it also kind of led into what is going to be expected relatively soon in the next coming episodes of Boruto, because as I've already stated before, around like episode 50, I believe, is when we are actually going to get to the Chunin exams, and it was stated in this week's episode that the Chunin exams are actually going to be starting up relatively soon. So what this episode mainly entailed for us was to give us more characterization to some of the characters that haven't really had a whole lot of screen time in the Boruto series to begin with. In particular, we actually got some screen time with Iwabe, Denki, and Metal Lee in this episode of Boruto, but not only that, we actually got to see Udon-Sensei in this episode, which, in my personal opinion, looks completely different from what I remember him as. I mean, sure, in, the previous Naruto series, he appeared as a snot-nosed little kid who really wasn't much of attention grabbing to begin with, but when it came down to seeing him as an adult in this episode, it was like, wow, oh, that's, pretty interesting. Just his whole, appearance is totally different, and I didn't recognize him, to be honest, until it was revealed that his name is, in fact, Udon-Sensei. Up until this point, we've only seen Moegi and Konohamaru, but seeing, one of the original three from the previous Naruto series, it was actually, kind of cool to see Udon back in action. And how exactly Udon presented himself in this episode of Boruto was actually quite interesting, because it focused on the whole, being a shinobi is not all about being cool factor. There are certain things that make a shinobi a shinobi. Being cool just to look flashy is not what a shinobi is all about. Determination is one of the huge factors of being a shinobi. As long as you have determination, you will accomplish your goals and, in general, just stand out amongst the crowd. No matter how determined you are in any aspects of life, you will stand out amongst the crowd, which is actually relatively true. And see, what's funny about this is that this episode was called the Genin Documentary, and basically it focused on Metal Lee, Iwabe, and Denki going around, three of, let's say, probably the most, uninspired characters in, the Boruto series. I mean, Metal Lee is technically a carbon copy of his father. We have Iwabe, who has been repeating the Genin entrance exams for numerous amounts of times. He eventually has become a Genin. He recently has, but all in all, it's like he is shown as a loser, and he's frustrated at that factor. And then, well, when it comes to Denki's just smart, he's just smart. He can hack into, other computer systems and whatnot, but in terms of, like, I guess his popularity, he doesn't really stand out amongst the crowd. So when it comes down to showcasing these three individuals, it was just showing that, small characters who aren't as popular or as cool in the series can still stand out against the crowd. And I don't know about you all, but to me, I actually really like the screen time that these three got in this episode of Boruto. I actually really do like it when other characters, minor characters in fact, get screen time. So, I mean, you can all leave your thoughts and opinions down below about that, but I mean, personally, I love it when other cast of characters actually get screen times, because it actually, they gain respect from me, and you also get to learn a little bit more about them internally and also what they're capable of. But anyways, going back on track with this whole, Genin documentary thing, we have these individuals, trying to look cool for a filming crew that the Hokage gives them. Their mission is to simply, you know, film a documentary about the daily life of a shinobi and what a shinobi does, you know. And throughout all this, they kind of realize how many things they are lacking in, and they grow frustrated over this, the fact that, you know, they can't really seem to present themselves as cool individuals. But again, later down in this episode, we see how, you know, being a ninja is not all about being cool. You know, we even have Udon-Sensei appear in this episode, who does something completely ridiculous, but at the same time, it was actually kind of cool. You see what I mean? Because, like, he's basically trying to, you know, tell his classmates that, hey, you know, being cool is not all about being a shinobi, but there are certain things that you can do that are not cool or just borderline ridiculous that can end up becoming, you know, something that people actually acknowledge, and that's what makes you stand out from the crowd, you know. And what Udon-Sensei does is that, you know, the snot drip thing that he always would do in the beginning of the Naruto series, you know, when we see him, you know, in this series, he does the same exact thing. You know, he has that same quirk to him, so to speak. And this jutsu that he does, like, is enabled by his snot, which is so disgusting, but it works. It works, you know. It's not cool by any means, but the presentation of it looked cool. You know what I'm saying? So, like, what he does is not cool. It's actually disgusting and utterly ridiculous, but the presentation of the jutsu is what made it cool because of just, you know, how he went about it, you know? So I don't know. Like, when it came down to this episode, it was a decent episode at best. I mean, it was mainly kind of a breather compared to what we got from last week's episode, dealing with the whole Byakuga gang, the conclusion to that. And we're probably going to receive another episode like this of Boruto next week. You know, that's kind of like fillerish. But around episode 50, I believe, is when we are actually going to see the TV adaptation of Boruto, the movie. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode of Boruto. I mean, this was a relatively simple episode. I mean, there's really not much to talk about. It was simply just an episode that gave Iwabe, Denki, Rock Lee, or excuse me, Metal Lee, and also Udon-Sensei even some screen time within this episode. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. And honestly, I'm glad that, you know, we actually did get focused on them, because now they know as shinobi that it's not all about just being flashy and what have you. You know, the more determination you have, the more motivation you can bring to others who will acknowledge you for that determination that you have. And that is what's going to lead you to carry on, you know, the career of a shinobi, which is necessarily what Udon taught them within this, you know, and that's one of Udon's main goals. You know, he didn't care how much of a loser he looked like. He was actually a, you know, really determined individual to actually become a shinobi, and that's what I liked about this episode. But what I really enjoyed about this episode was the conclusion that we got with that bit with Naruto at the end. You know, he was basically stating that, you know, how he was a loser and that he failed many times as a Genin in his Genin entrance exams, kind of like how Iwabe. So Iwabe and Naruto can actually relate to a good extent. And then he goes on to say that oh, well, when it comes to my position of being Hokage, some stuff happened, so necessarily, I'm still a Genin. It's just that I, you know, progressed through the ranks a relatively quicker, but in actuality, I'm still a Genin as the Hokage. You know, I love that. I laughed at the end of that part of the episode, so I'm pretty sure some of you probably laughed at that too, because it's ultimately true. We never saw, you know, Naruto become a Chunin. We never saw him become a Jonin. So, I mean, you know, seeing him become a Hokage, you know, directly after being a Genin is what makes it funny. So that's why I liked what Studio Peria included right there at the end of the episode. But yeah, That basically ends my thoughts for this week's episode of Boruto. It was an alright episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that red subscribe button down below if you want to see more anime and manga content here on the channel. And with that said, everyone, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out.